2000s one with the fake droplets on it and things like that. And for some reason, it actually hit me way harder than it actually should have, because what's so special about an old Sprite can? Well, to me, it felt really like that moment from the movie Ratatouille, where Anton Ego takes one bite of the dish they made, and suddenly he gets thrown back into a childhood memory of his, where he came back home after kind of demolishing his bicycle with probably a really bad fall to a nice homemade ratatouille, but except instead of some perfect homemade meal, it was me remembering being a kid, forcing myself to drink Sprite because I thought it looked cool to drink carbonated soda. But what actually stuck with me wasn't the drink itself. It was the design of the whole drink, the fake water droplets printed on the metal, and the lemon and lime, the little bits of texture that made it look really cool and fresh before you even opened the can itself. It tried to make you feel something. And later that day, surprise, surprise, because apparently the government and Mark Zuckerberg know exactly what I'm thinking about all the time, the social media feed suddenly got flooded with the nostalgic posts, the old commercials, retro product design, early 2000 ads, and side-by-side comparisons between old packaging and the minimalistic versions we see today. Why do so many things today feel really bland? And it's not just this Sprite can. Like, once you notice it, you see it everywhere. Old gadgets had wild designs. Ads used to be very loud and bizarre. Subcultures had bold visual styles that made them instantly recognizable. And today, a lot of that character and personality feels sanded down. Everything looks cleaner and more, professional, but also strangely similar. I mean, at first I assumed it was just nostalgia, but the more examples I saw, the clearer the pattern became. Older ads were really exaggerated and expressive. Bright colors, strange layouts, visuals that practically shouted for attention. While modern design feels very minimal, to say the least. And that's when a thought hit me. This might be wrong, but hear me out for a second. Like, okay, so once something becomes, too big or mainstream, the personality of it slowly fades away more and more. So when something grows from a niche idea into something massive, the rules really change. Suddenly it has to work for millions of people, maybe billions. It has to offend no one, translate across cultures, and it fit neatly on a tiny smartphone screen. It has to scale a lot, and when things scale, the weird edges of it gets smoothed out. And when something becomes fully mainstream, its personality doesn't really disappear overnight. It gets sanded down slowly, piece by piece. And so, for example, these weird commercials become risky, or bold mascots become childish, messy layouts become inconsistent, so everything gets simplified and optimized. And each decision really makes sense on its own, like, make it clearer, make it faster, make it easier to use, make it work for everyone. But stack enough of those decisions together and something kind of strange happens. Everything works better and everything looks cleaner, and somehow everything starts to feel interchangeable. And that tension is really what this video is about, and that's why I wanted to make this video. Like, over the last few decades, we made products, brands, software, and media more efficient and easier to scale than ever before, but in that same process, we also made them more predictable and less memorable. And the personality of it that was in the beginning that made us like those brands and products really faded away. And that's because when mainstream becomes optimized and predictable, the weirdness doesn't disappear, but it just moves in other corners. Like indie games, for example, or into niche communities, into underground scenes, into the edges of culture where experimentation is still allowed. And if you want proof of that, you only have to look at the advertising from the 90s and early 2000s. I mean, those ads were operating on a completely different level. So let's rewind a few decades back to the 1990s, which was a glorious times when advertising lost its mind in a very good way. Around back then, you might not believe the stuff that used to be on TV, which I found out by doing research myself, watching tons of videos, because I'm not from the 90s. Just to say that, just to get that out of the way. But that aside, the ads weren't all sterile slogans and sleek lifestyle shots. A lot of them were bonkers and memorable because of that. In the US, Pepsi was running tame ads with supermodels. But in Japan, oh boy, Japan gave us Pepsi Man, a buff, spandex-clad superhero with a blank silver face who would sprint through streets delivering ice-cold Pepsi to thirsty folks, then inevitably faceplant or cause slapstick chaos. No joke, Pepsi Man became a cult icon, even got his own video game. On damn hold on, let me. I forgot what on what console. I'm gonna put it right here. Anyway, besides that, a soda company created a superhero just to sell, cola, and it really worked because it was so absurd you couldn't look away. Pepsi Man's commercials were really simple. You had someone barged queue with cue heroic music in the background, and Pepsi Man enters and gives the soda, and someone burps. It's wonderfully quirky, to say the least. I mean, ask anyone who saw those ads, they remember them decades later. And now you may ask, why is it so memorable? Well, because they were unabashedly weird, and that weirdness made the brand's character really unforgettable. I think Japan really did a great job in making those, out of touch, weird, unique ads. Well, modern marketing tends to explain features and specifications. Companies in the late 90s and early 2000s often did kind of the opposite. They try to make you feel something first and then explain the product later. And nowhere was this more obvious than with the, PlayStation 2 and the entire culture that grew around it. Sony didn't just advertise a console, they built an atmosphere around it, something mysterious, surreal, and slightly unsettling. And I can talk on and on about the PlayStation 2 forever. Like, one of the most famous examples was the campaign often associated with mental wealth, which was directed by the experimental filmmaker Chris Cunningham. The commercial shows basically a pale Scottish girl with huge, almost alien-like eyes staring directly into the camera while delivering a strange, cryptic monologue about the universe. The entire thing feels like a fever dream. It's unsettling, confusing, and barely mentions the console itself. But yet, that was exactly the point. The ad wasn't trying to list features or explain what the console could do. It was trying to create a mood that you can associate with the PlayStation 2. It made the PlayStation feel really mysterious and slightly kinda dangerous, like stepping into another dimension rather than simply buying a machine to play games on. Especially Sony leaned heavily into that strange energy. Another campaign, which was Welcome to the Third Place, which was directed by David Lynch, looked less like a commercial and more like an abstract art film. The visuals were bizarre and dreamlike, filled with surreal imagery that had almost nothing to do with gameplay at all. But again, that was the entire strategy. The message wasn't like, okay, this console has better graphics and, it's new technology stuff. The message was that PlayStation existed in its own strange universe, somewhere between technology and imagination. It actually did kind of paid off because PlayStation 2 really did amazingly well. And this approach wasn't also not limited to the PlayStation itself. The wider gaming industry at the time was filled with the same kind of chaotic creativity. Ads for games like Mortal Kombat embraced pure spectacle, explosions, exaggerated violence, and over-the-top hype. The marketing didn't try to sound safe or polished, it tried to feel rebellious. And there are more ads like this. For example, Rayman also had some very nice ads, but buying the games almost felt like participating in something slightly mysterious, forbidden, like kind of like ish. But what's important here is that none of this advertising was safe or predictable. These campaigns didn't look like they had been carefully optimized by a global marketing department trying to appeal to everyone at once. They were weird, sometimes uncomfortable, and I would say some of these ads would actually be impossible to launch on national TV in this time. But that unpredictability was exactly what made them, memorable.
野球しようぜ。
オッケー。
行こう行こう。お前ら今日はやったよ。
任しとけ。
セガと三四郎。
姿三四郎。
セガサターンしろ。
高速ハリネズミソニックのレースゲームソニック R。
セガサターン。
Looking back at these campaigns now, they almost feel really impossible. It's hard to imagine a modern tech company approving a commercial that's strange, that abstract, or that disconnected from the product itself. And that contrast reveals something important about the shift we've been talking about. Those older ads weren't trying to be universally safe or perfectly optimized. And let's not forget the randomly strange bits of the branding that lodged in our brains. Like, do you remember the Winamp, the MP3 player software? If you do, you definitely remember its bizarre audio tagline, the glitchy, the Winamp. It really whips the llama's ass. I hope it's kind of a good imitation. Anyway, upon installing, a voice actually said that to you, like with no context given at all. Completely silly and also completely unique. I bet a lot of people really have that phrase bouncing around their heads and still have it in their mind. Why? Well, because it's really weird and really out of nowhere. It gave a simple music app a fun, edgy personality to it. I mean, what really expects a llama reference in their software? And not only PlayStation's whole marketing vibe was edgy and avant-garde, SEGA in Japan created Segata Sanshiro, which is a fictional judo master who would beat up anyone who was not playing a Sega Saturn. I'm talking literally show up and judo throw kids for playing baseball instead of Sega. And in one commercial he explodes after riding a missile. It's really insane, and guess what? People loved it, and I loved it too. Segata became a legend. Sega fans still sing his theme song today. That weirdness built a myth. Similarly, Western game ads had guys in giant Crash Bandicoot suits heckling Nintendo's headquarters, or Nintendo's own Who Are You campaign showing gamers in absurd scenarios matching game worlds. It was all tongue-in-cheek and fun. And I can yap on and on about those, unique, weird-ass commercials. Like, for example, Segata Sanshiro pulling up on a club, and he is also beating all of them down because they were clubbing and not playing the Sega Saturn. Anyways, the point is that weird advertising works, or at least it kind of did in that era, because it gave brands memorable character. These ads weren't optimized by algorithms, but they were driven by human creativity and a bit of, taking a risk and have the let's see what happens mindset. And the result is that the brand's character that seared itself into our memories. Pepsi wasn't just a cola, it was the cola with the crazy superhero. PlayStation wasn't just a console, but it was this edgy art house full of very unique, different ads, art house experience. And we remember these because they dared to be different, even if that meant being downright bizarre. And today, if you watch those old ads on YouTube, you might laugh at how unpolished or random they are compared to modern ads, but that roughness was the whole charm of it. It felt really human, idiosyncratic. Ooh. Idiosyncratic. IDIOSYNCRAR ATIC. Idiosyncratic. Anyway, it felt human, idiosyncratic, not run through 10 layers of corporate approval, and they build affection through quirks and humor. And a lot of us find ourselves missing that now. And as one blogger reminiscing on the 90s PlayStation ads puts it, that this era was filled with all kinds of crazy ads. They were thinking outside of the box to make some wild advertisements. Exactly, and the ads were often nonsense, but memorable nonsense, and that's infinitely better for a brand than being forgettably safe. And before we're gonna move on to the next section, I just wanna turn around and make it look like I'm actually watching some of the ads that I found, but I couldn't like fit them all in this video because it's gonna be way too long. And so I'm gonna put my mic down and let's watch some together. It's gonna be 10 seconds. So yeah.
Morning, fish. It's me, Bax and Jack, the Modem Man. Up and down loading, baby. Techno trailblazer. Commander.
To make sure every scrumptious bite of Waffle Crisp cereal tastes just like Grandma's homemade waffles and syrup. And how? Introducing Post Waffle Crisp, a brand new cereal with old-fashioned value.
Can I have a Pepsi?
Sorry, sold out of Pepsi.
Okay, that's it. Moving on. So, if Weird and Weld was so great, why did it go away? Why did people stop doing those ads? Well, we have to enter the 2010s, the age of algorithms, A/B testing, and real-time metrics when advertising and a lot of other things had an analytical brain implanted and a soul, partially removed. And this is the era when we started hearing phrases like data-driven marketing and optimize for engagement everywhere. At first glance, it sounds really great, like, who wouldn't want to use data to make ads better? But, better quickly came to mean whatever gets the most clicks right now, and that has some unintended side effects. Okay, so I'm gonna draw a scenario. Here's company A, which launches a quirky ad campaign, maybe not as wacky as Pepsi Man, but something with a little bit of, personality. And they put it online, and oh no, the immediate click-through numbers aren't stellar. A panic, ooh. So they're A/B testing a safer version, with a dull background, a clear product shot, a big 50% off, and with the dull ad, the clicks go up by 2%. And guess which ad the algorithm favors? The safe one. And over time, or immediately, really anything that doesn't pull instant numbers gets tossed away in the trash bin. And in marketing meetings, someone inevitably says, according to the real-time dashboard, the quirky joke about llamas isn't resonating at all, so we have to cut it. And thus, bit by bit, the funny, edgy, or unique ideas get optimized out in favor or bland efficient. That was a great combo wombo. And thus, bit by bit, the funny, edgy, or unique ideas get optimized out in favor of bland efficiency. And to make things worse, social media poured jet fuel on this whole process. And on platforms like Facebook, you can measure every single interaction. Marketers started asking, like, what's our cost per click? What's the conversation rate? So campaigns got shorter, tactics got more robotic, and long-term brand building, the kind that used to give us mascots and jingles that stick with you, took a backseat to short-term performance marketing. Why spend money making people love your brand over years when you can pay Facebook to show an ad that began converging on the same generic formulas, because those were proven to not fall outright? And so it becomes really advertising by algorithmic consensus rather than humanic consensus. There's a marketing maxim from experts like Lebinet and Peter Field. So basically you need a balance of long-term brand marketing, which is emotional and often a bit abstract, like those old memorable ads, and you have short-term sales activation with the click now and 50% off and only 2 available, that kind of stuff. But in the 2010s, the pendulum swung hard toward the short-term side. Companies slashed brand advertising budget, poured money into highly targeted, data-optimized digital ads. And those weird PlayStation ads, well, today they would be considered very risky indulgences with no clear ROI. Instead of this, you would get an Instagram ad that's been focus grouped and A/B tested to death with, let's say if it was a PlayStation ad, maybe a new game, just a trailer, and that's it. And it won't confuse or offend anyone because the algorithm really made sure of that, but it won't delight anyone either. Exists politely asking for your attention without raising its voice. I know it kinda is not just the style of ads, but it's also the tone of everything. Look at the brand's social media accounts now versus a decade ago. Many have become hyper sanitized or trend chasing shells. They all tweet the same memes, the same jokes, but because they saw Wendy's or some brand go viral once, and now that's the playbook. It's as if there's a giant social media algorithmic blender that purees distinct brand voices into a homogeneous, lukewarm smoothie of hashtags and emojis. Thank you. If a brand tries something truly offbeat and it backfires even a little, the backlash is swift. And not only is it swift, it is humongous, huge, and the data analysts scurry back to Savity Plus. There's also fear in the mix in the age of Twitter, dragging, and cancel culture. Many brands are terrified of making a bold move that could be misinterpreted, so they play it extra safe because being quirky or edgy risks alienating someone. Being neutral and bland might not inspire love, but it also doesn't spark hate. So neutrality becomes the default. We optimize ourselves into politeness, as one marketing writer observed. He basically says, like, we've optimized ourselves into content that's so careful not to offend, challenge, or surprise that it barely registers as human. Oof, right? Let me just oof. But it's true. A lot of brand content today feels like it was written by an AI that's been told not to make anyone mad, and increasingly it is literally gonna be written by AI. I mean, you see it, which that's a whole other layer of generic. I mean, that's not relevant to this video. In fact, speaking of AI, now we have algorithms writing copy and even generating images, also videos. I mean, you see those sometimes those ads on YouTube with these, hyper realistic videos with a man explaining the whole business, but you can clearly see it's AI. Yeah, that, but it's left unchecked, and a lot of AI generated content tends to sound the same. A kind of polite, inoffensive badge voice. If brands rely on that too much, their voices converge even more. And recently, I read a marketing article that pointed out that when you let AI lead, that everything drifts toward the middle. And it exactly is that middle where brand voices go, they die off. And that line gives me chills because it doesn't just apply to AI. It's a perfect summary of what happened to advertising in general. And everything drifted towards that middle. The weird lost, and the middle of the road won. And so the age of weird advertising and having personality gave way to the age of algorithms. And in this new age, the metrics are king. And if a dancing llama doesn't maximize engagement, that llama gets chopped off, gone, vanished. If an eerie art house ad doesn't have a clear call to action, it's not happening. And if a random guy is sitting on a bed with a panty on his face, that also gets immediately gone. And the result of all of this is that ads, products, and designs that are perfectly optimized are also perfectly forgettable, and they check all the boxes except that one where you actually give a damn when you see them. But almost nobody gives a damn anymore. But now I'm painting a bit of a bleak picture, being all doom and gloom. It's not like creativity is dead enough advertising. There are still brilliant campaigns and funny brand tweets, but those tend to be exceptions that prove the whole rule of it. The overall trend is clear. Real-time optimization squeezed the life out of a lot of marketing, and the edges got rounded off. The unique got averaged out, and the things that make you go, huh? Oh, that's cool, funny, weird, got labeled as inefficient and removed, and it is as if the industry said that this quirkiness can't be quantified, so we have to let it sail the seas and say goodbye. In doing so, many of these brands lost the thing that really made them this big, that really made them where they are right now. I mean, sure, nobody's really offended, but nobody's really excited either, It's like going from a viral street carnival to a very whitish, minimalistic PowerPoint. It's not just advertising, I've been ramping on about advertising for, I think, 20 minutes. This optimization mindset took over other areas as well, like the design of products themselves. Well, which brings us to our next stop on this whole journey, the tale of how our beloved gadgets lost their groovy shapes and became identical rectangles. And yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna stop the video right here, and this is immediately the part 2, so you can move on and watch this one. I don't know, but we'll see.